Hello, and welcome to the most recent installment of Gothicalong, where we discuss all of the books by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This month is Mexican Gothic, so we are talking all about Mexican Gothic, which was a reread for me, and another 5 stars. So I love that. What we'll do is I will put a banner up to say that it is non-spoilers to begin with, and then we will do a spoiler chat afterwards. And then if you've got any questions, please feel free to drop them in comments, because it's just me, so the more you guys chat, the easier it makes it for me, basically. But non-spoilers for anyone who's kind of jumping in on this, having not finished Mexican Gothic or interested in Mexican Gothic and haven't picked it up yet. Essentially, this follows a kind of 1930s, 90s, 40s style classic Gothic, where a young woman, Naomi, is rushed out of a party because she needs to go and essentially rescue her cousin, who has got married to this guy she probably shouldn't have married, and has been whisked away to a house in the middle of nowhere, and her father is worried about her. They're worried that he's going to be money grabbing or has kind of manipulated her, but what they're really worried about is how her mental health is being affected. So Naomi goes out and tries to rescue her cousin, but there are supernatural elements in this, real classic Gothic vibes, and what I love is just the sheer number of classic Gothic tropes in this. It was the one that kind of inspired the read-along anyway, in the fact that it was my favourite, and any excuse, the book that made Silvia Moreno Garcia my author, to be honest. So hey Ellen, how are you? What did you rate it out of 5? Did you finish it in the end? What did you think? Let me know. So yeah, like I said, I gave it 5 stars. This was a reread, and I did find that there were a lot more things kind of tucked behind heavy descriptions that I hadn't noticed the first time, but upon rereading came up a lot, and I really, really liked that. And I will go into more details in the spoilery section. But just to see in case anyone else turns up, because I have just shared this across all the Discords and Twitter, etc., to say that we are live. I want to keep it as non-spoilery to begin with as possible. But yes, what did you think, Ellen? Let me know. Oh, YouTube just texted me to say that I've gone live. Isn't that nice? It was either a 4 or 4.5 for me. I can't remember, but I really enjoyed it. Where did it lose a star or half a star? Let me know. When I core piled it, in fact, I will get my core pile up. Let me get my core pile up and I can tell you, because there were a couple of things that I didn't rate 10 out of 10, but it was still rated really, really highly. So I gave it 8 for characters, because some of them do fall into tropes, but I loved the characters. Atmosphere was a 9. I don't normally give 10s on anything other enjoyment, but that one gets a 10. Is a 9. Writing is a 9, can't fault it in any way. The plot was a 7, because I think actually not a lot happens, but what does happen is very exciting. Intrigue was high with an 8. Logic was also high with an 8, and then enjoyment was a 10. So it came out at 59 points, which is almost as high. Yeah, almost as high as 3 Fires, which is the other 5-star I read this month. I don't remember much, but I really love the vibe. The vibe is there. Mexican Gothic comes with all of the vibes. All of the vibes. Yeah. Okay, well, in which case, if there's nothing else to add, I will just go straight on to the spoilery discussion. I'm also going to mute myself because I need to hiccup. One sec. That's better. I didn't really want to do that on the mic because that's gross. Anyway. Okay, so let's go through character by character. Naomi as a main character is really, really interesting to me. I really, really liked her kind of very modern, but not good girl, but kind of conservative behavior. She is very aware of the society that she lives in, and she's very, very good at manipulating the society she lives in. With the other female protagonists that we've had, there have been very few that are as well put together and as responsive to their social situation as Naomi is. Naomi is a very strong character in understanding how the world around her works, and that is probably why it's so jarring for her coming to this other place where society means nothing and she means nothing. And I really, really like that. That kind of fish out of water is usually played the other way. It's usually a case of a small town rural person coming to a big city struggles, as opposed to a big city person struggling. That is a classic Gothic trope, and you will see it a lot in thrillers and mysteries, because we rely on so much. To have that taken away can be quite daunting. So as a female protagonist, I found her, even just her foundation elements of her character, really, really interesting. First time I read this, I couldn't get into the slow development at the start. Okay, that's fair. How do I word this? What is it about the slow development that you didn't like? Was it just the fact that nothing seemed to be happening, or was it more that there was a lot being developed and it was just taking its good time to get there? But now I've read more Gothic, I trust the process. Yes, I think that's the thing, is slow burn is very much a Gothic process. And I think with this, there is so much that has to be built up slowly, because if they give you everything, it's just not spooky in the same way. Gothic doesn't tend to be scary. It's not jump scares. It's not necessarily visceral gore, although there is that in this. It's more insidious than that. And to be insidious, it has to be built up slowly. It has to have that slow burn, which is why so many Gothics can be read as quite boring, or people don't like Gothic because it's boring in comparison to thrillers and horrors, which speed up the process. Yeah, I like that she had all these big plans, but clearly knew people weren't going to be happy about them. Yeah, like her constant love of anthropology is obviously balanced with the fact that she also wanted to be an actress, and she also wanted to be a scientist, and she also wanted to be this, that, and the other, and a socialite, and blah, blah, blah. And I really like that, because I think that's very true for young people. And I think it's also very true for young people who have a lot of heavy influence and money, but also a lot of freedom, which she does. And I think her family are kind of despairing of the fact that she's got all these grand ideas, but she's also it has made her very ambitious, very opinionated, and kind of makes her the perfect protagonist for this, because she's going to go in and get stuff done. So I do kind of love that. I do kind of love her for that. I also really enjoyed that she's got a variety of interests. Obviously, we've talked in previous Gothicalong live shows about the fact that Silvia Moreno Garcia clearly has an interest in movie making, clearly has an interest in certain anthropological things. Obviously, eugenics comes up quite a lot in this, which it does in Silver Nitrate, which it does in Untamed Shore, which it does in Gods of Jade and Shadow. So it's clearly for her an interest, especially with regards to the racism she may or may not have experienced directly. Yes, I liked how the interest in anthropology developed when she got to the house. Yes, it was one of those things where, because it was already a foundation. Thank you. We've got a creeper.
Hello, friends.
You've read Gothic, Mexican Gothic before, right?
Yeah.
What did you think?
I liked it quite a lot.
Yeah. Do you remember much about the characters?
I remember the really creepy guy, the uncle guy.
Yeah. Yeah, the old guy, Howard.
Yeah, not the uncle, the uncle-in-law.
No, he's Virgil's father and Francis's uncle.
Yes, I remember him.
Because Francis's father passed away.
I remember the guy who's like, I want to get in your pants, and like, this is wrong. That guy.
Virgil.
Yeah.
I have a lot to say about him.
The young guy.
That's Francis.
Because I think Francis is the one that's like...
No, he's not. He's not like that at all.
Oh, I think
you're conflating the two, which is quite interesting, because that is also a theme. Virgil's the one that's like touching her up in the bath. Francis is the one that's like, you need to get out, and like does everything he can to protect her.
Yeah.
And it's not until she's like, I want you to come with me, and he's like, yeah, obviously I want to come with you too. You're amazing. Mm-hmm. But at no point does he ever like do anything to her.
I remember the mushrooms being a thing.
Yep.
And then right at the end, them being like everywhere. That was cool. But I remember the weird ghost stuff happening.
Mm-hmm. So Plenty, you remember Plenty?
For a book I read over 2 years ago, I think that's pretty fucking good, to be honest.
I read this when it came out, so I think like 2001. What? Little bosses on there?
2001, 2021, you mean?
It actually came out in 2020, but I think I read it in 2021. So actually, it held up for reading again, which I really enjoyed. There was loads that I remembered those building blocks, but how it got there was still enjoyable, was still exciting to get there.
Yeah.
So
I really liked it. It was the first Silvia Moreno Garcia. Unfortunately, I haven't read many more that I've really enjoyed, other than, annoyingly, the one I didn't want to like, which was The Beautiful Ones.
That's hilarious to me. That's hilarious to me.
The others have been kind of like on a level for me, but Mexican Gothic, I think, is by far a Silvia Moreno Garcia's
I
best
think
work.
that's what we're finding with this read along anyway. So I really liked Gods of Jade and Shadow. Untamed Shore was interesting. It still got 4 stars, but by no means my favourite. Beautiful Ones and Mexican Gothic are still my top 2. But Silver Nitrate was just fine.
Yeah,
and
I
I'm
enjoyed
really
that.
nervous about next month because next month there's certain dark things.
Oh, you're gonna have to like.
I'm gonna have to actually finish it.
You should have started reading it in January, Hannah. I don't know what it is about that book, like specifically that Silvia Moreno Garcia, but Hannah just can't sit and read it. If she can, it would just take a long time.
I might have to do the audiobook. I genuinely am not sure I'll be able to get through it otherwise. But we'll give it a go.
But I enjoy Mexican Gothic back on theme.
Back onto
I haven't read Gothic and Shadow, so I can't speak of that one.
I think you'd enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. It's kind of like a Mexican version of American Gods, but without all the racism.
I haven't read American Gods either.
Yeah, but it's Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett.
Yeah, I probably like
which
it.
you do enjoy.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'll fuck off now. I'll leave you to your live show. I just thought I'd bring you a cup of tea.
Thank you.
And put my 2 cents in while I was here.
We love to
You know.
You know.
As you do.
As you do.
I'm being weird. I'm going to leave them now.
Okay, bye. Bye. Oh, you're just waving like a creep. Okay. Yes, so didn't hate the hobbies in this one. Yes, but it's really interesting to me because my TLDR on that. Huh? I did. Sorry, the bathroom window's open and that was me. Yeah, the TLDR on that is the foundation is already set up. She's already got this interest in those subjects. So when she starts reading about the eugenics, when she starts reading about the behavior, when she sees those clues, she already has a foundation of knowledge, which is really important and very much helps her and does single her out as someone who is more capable of fighting off this thing than her sister would have been, who's caught up in fairy tales or previous partners who were caught up in other societal things. The fact that she has that interest is important. It made her, yes, exactly, made her well placed to pick apart the racism of the family, which they try to hide by academic discourse, which is a really common thing. Have you read Superior by Angela Saini? Okay, reading list for everyone. This nonfiction by Angela Saini is genius. And what she talks about the history of racism and how often we expect racists to be bald, white, covered in tattoo thugs, right? When we think racist, it's those extreme far right fascists. And yet, a lot of racism is perpetuated by authorities in white lab coats doing science, claiming that their false bias is correct because they have scientific backing. And it's so common, it's kind of disgusting. But really, really common. So the fact that this academic discourse is hiding it, and it's really, really interesting because when they start talking about the incest and stuff, and she's like, that's gross. And then Virgil's like, yeah, which is why we've started inviting in new blood, and we've decided to pick you and your people because you're made of sturdier stuff is so gross. Like all of that is so gross, but makes for a delicious dark Gothic. We love to see it. That is the perfect description of Virgil. He's such a creep. He is such a creep. We will get onto him properly. Also, can't remember their names. You're fine. I have literally finished it this afternoon because I knew I would finish it, so I was not in any rush. And I knew I remembered quite a lot as well, so I will remember their names for you. Fear not. The people in the dreams were creepy. Yep, creepy. Hey, Pixie, don't worry. You are not late, really, because we've barely touched on anything so far. All you've missed is me saying that Noemi is my favourite kind of protagonist in the fact that she knows what she's talking about. Sans Dark Things certainly has interesting stuff in it. If you like commentary on colonialism, Mexican Gothic, you'll at least appreciate something about it. Yes, I think I struggled with it because it's not as historical, and I do find that I much prefer Silvia Moreno Garcia's historical Gothics to her more modern ones. And I hadn't read Silver Nitrate at that point, and therefore couldn't be disappointed by that one at that point. So I was disappointed by this one, and I am concerned. Yes, you do. So Superior by Angela Saini. It's available via Waypoint. So let me just get the link up for you, because obviously being in the Discord, you get a discount code. So go use that discount code to get yourself a copy of Superior, because it's so good. She also did a book called Inferior, where she does a very similar thing, but about feminism. So we love to see it. I have shared it in the chat. So yes, treat yourself to non-fiction today. I've read certain dark things too. Good, because the live show is going to be in a month's time. It is going to be on the 9th of April. So we need to have read it so that we can discuss it. I was expecting to stick with it. I would die for Noemi. Me too. Me too. And you know what? She'd let us. She would let us. And also Catalina, that is her name. Yes, the cousin. Yeah. I liked how, again, classic SMG, she was not helpless as she first seemed. This is the thing. I think with both Catalina and Noemi, neither of them were helpless. Catalina was subdued. She was drugged. She was emotionally and physically manipulated. She was coerced and possessed. And she still managed to slice a guy up. So you don't mess with them. You don't mess with those girls because they will mess you up. I loved her. Okay, cool. Well, okay, so we talked about Noemi. Let's talk about Catalina a little bit more, because another classic trope is obsession with fairy tales. And that is because when Gothic fiction kind of originated as a genre, the only other things that were kind of heavy literature that were narrative based were fairy tales. Now, a lot of those were obviously already passed down as opposed to written down. And it's why we associate a lot of our fairy tales with either Hans Christian Andersen or the Grimm brothers, etc., because whilst they were much older than those writers embellished them, and much like Shakespeare, kind of wrote them down. And that's how they've become embodied in that thing. So it's quite a Gothic thing to have characters obsessed with fairy tales, usually because there's the supernatural elements. There's a lot of elements that you see that are crossover with Gothic fiction, such as classic fairies or monsters, ghosts, and things like that. Being careful what to wish for, etc. Like Catalina wanting to run away and get married. That's exactly what she gets, except that's not the healthy option, and it doesn't really work out for her. She does make it out, but only when she stops being the classic fairy tale damsel. It's only when she actually starts sticking up for herself. And now I really like that it's not that she starts sticking up for herself, that at the end, out of nowhere, she becomes this person. I really like that it's established earlier on that she is fighting to get out, that she has this potion that she is taking to combat the mushrooms and the possession, that she is keeping secrets from people, that she is able to pretend to be more mild than she is, that she's not willing to let them see. When she starts passing notes to Noemi, for example, she doesn't ever let them see or know that she is more sentient than she is, which is really, really clever. And it means that when she then starts to fight to get out properly, she's already been fighting. She's already been doing what she can to get out. I really, really like that. There are no damsels in this story. Even Agatha, who is the OG damsel of this story, does not go without a fight, because she, obviously being the spirit that is possessing the mushroom that then perpetuates the magic, and being the initial sacrifice, being buried alive, is brutal, still comes out swinging and still manages to do what she can, becoming the ghost and supporting the girls and giving them clues and being the gloaming that then shows them how to defeat other things and defeat the men. I just loved it. I loved it. It was such a great metaphor for fuck the patriarchy as well. And like, it's women helping women. We love to see it. And it's just, like there is nothing not to like about this book. It's so good. It's so good. And it really feels like fighting in this book. Yes. Yes, this is one of the things I liked. Often they resolve themselves very easily. Yes. At no point was it an easy escape for them. The threats were both physical and mental, and were both insidious and aggressive. They are, what's the word? Tangible and intangible, passive and impassive. Like, it's all there. And the fact is, they are having to fight their way out of these situations. It's not easy and it's not nice. So yes, I love that too. Here it was clear how Catalina got trapped. It could very easily have not gone the way it did. Yes. Yeah. I like the fact that if they had let her marry the man she wanted to marry, this wouldn't have happened to her. She would have been poor, but this wouldn't have happened. There we go. Can you hear me? Can you see me? I think that's because Zach's just turned the PlayStation on. It could also be because I'm on the wrong internet again. It automatically connects to one and actually the other one's closer. So yes, very easily could not have gone that way. Go on, let me click on the comments. There we go. Here we go. Right. No, it's not you. The internet is playing up big time. Can we talk about, I don't know, can we? It's not. There we go. It's playing up with the comments now as well. My internet is having a time. Can we talk about the atmosphere in the house? Literally the perfect Gothic novel. Yes. So I really like the fact that, one, let's talk about the name of the house, okay? The fact that it's called High Place, the idea that it has separated itself through moral superiority, okay? It has not just separated itself from the Mexican town that it's in. It has separated itself from the traditions of England, but brought England with it. And obviously we hear the bit about how the Doyles were doing magics way before they even arrived in Mexico. And talking about how they kind of like Puritanism had tried to escape, which I really like because that obviously leads into like colonialism anyway. And the idea that leaving for America meant that they would have more of a spiritual break. Zach's just being distracting. So there's a lot of that to deal with as well, but also the idea that yes, their moral superiority, the idea that what they believe they're doing is completely correct, and then obviously the fact that it is so isolated, it is so kind of caught up in this hill, misty, wet, gross. It kind of, to be fair, if it wasn't set in Mexico, it feels like it would be set in like the Scottish Highlands, which might be another reference. Just the idea that it's so out of the way and unassuming. So it's super creepy, super deliciously creepy. We love to see it. Not just yours, mine too. Mine is also rubbish. Yeah, so the setting's really interesting, and it's really interesting that we never hear about the rain or problems when she goes to the little town. When she's in the little town, the weather's fine, and it's not just obviously because they're heading down there, and it's obviously she can only get there because of the distance when the weather's better, but it is the idea that it is free of those darker, damp, because mushrooms have to have damp to thrive. They have to be in this dark, gloomy place to thrive, which is interesting because usually that would be a lower, danker place, but it's not. It's above everything else. I did not guess this was a bit about funky. No, it's really interesting because the front cover offers nothing. Okay, there is no mushrooms in the wallpaper, as horrible as that is. And also I love that this is the green wallpaper that she talks about that Victorians used to have, that had chemicals in it, and her family working in dyes, she has an understanding of that. I love that that's that wallpaper. So it's not even the wallpaper of the house, it's her metaphor for going mad is the wallpaper, right? The flowers, because they're forced to marry and they're dead, right? But no mushrooms, nothing. They're not even on her dress. On her dress, it is just lace and tulle, which is what she gets married in, lace, tulle, and chiffon, except this is red. She never once wears a dress like this. And yet. And I mean, you could just say that they just found a really nice dress and they decided to use it, because I'm pretty sure it's a Shutterstock image. It is. It is. But Martin D gave it a good shot. So good to Martin D. Even though, again, I should have, because the Guy Francis interests. Yes. So he's interested in it. It's almost like that's the only thing he's allowed to be interested in, right? So he does all the rubbings. He does all the art stuff almost exclusively about mushrooms. And it's almost like that's what he's been given license to have an interest in. And it's the only freedom he has is having an interest in this. And I really like the switch, because the implication that Virgil is going to be the next sacrifice is throughout her working out what's going on, is that Howard is clearly going to take over Virgil's body. But Virgil is so like Howard that that's never going to happen. He was obviously going to take over the body of Francis. Wild. So he's allowed one thing before he dies, and that's mushrooms. So talk about totalitarian control. All the essence are starting to blend for me. That's fair. That I understand that. I think when you're doing this many, one after the other, that can be really intense. And I think also because there are so many similarities, as books, reading them, standalones, they can be separated. When you start talking about themes and ideas, they overlap because they're from the same author. And they're also in a very similar genre. Bad guy trying a bad guy. Yeah, no honor among thieves. So I really, again, I agree with you. There is an opportunity here for Virgil to be an anti-hero or have a villain redemption arc where, even though he's been a sexual predator and a general asshole the whole way through the book, because he doesn't want to die, he saves them. And he chooses not to. He chooses absolute power instead of releasing them, which, men, am I right? I also really like his name, Virgil, because I'm almost 100% sure, Pixie will correct me, I feel like that has a meaning in something. Okay, so Virgil literally means flourishing in Latin. And I feel like, because it's rod bearer or staff bearer, I feel like it's in the Bible. And I feel like, isn't Virgil in Paradise Lost as well? Oh, he's not in the Bible, but he is a character in Dante's Divine Comedy. He guides people through hell and purgatory. So he is literally guiding everybody through the worst parts of their life. Wild. I wonder if Francis has an interesting meaning as well. The fact that Virgil means flourishing and is tied to Dante's Inferno. Love that. Let's see what Francis. Francis means free man. Literally just means free man. I wonder if Howard's got an interesting meaning as well. High Guardian. There we go. So Old Norse name from Havard, or I'm sorry if I fucked that, meaning High Guardian, borrowed from the Old German to mean heart brave. Yes, known as a warrior. So there we go. I love it when characters have interesting names that actually have like layered meanings, because I feel like at that point you probably could have guessed how their story was going to end just by their names. Like your sun rays to be evil is going to stab you in the back. Yeah, imagine. He's a real trip off the old block, is old Virgil. Yes, Dante's Inferno. Yeah, guide them through hell, which I really like, because he literally meets them at the end in a crypt where they are about to be confronted with something super, super dark. The original sin, right? The original thing that they did. In this instance, not Satan/Lucifer, but the body of Agatha. Wild. The biblical imagery. It's alluding, you know? Yeah. Fascinating. Fascinating. Let's see if Noemi's got an interesting... it might not, but... Okay. Noemi means beautiful, pleasant, and a delight. It's a Hebrew one. And then Catalina means pure. So there we go. Okay, so that's another Gothic thing anyway, is the idea of purity and chastity versus wanton lust. Now, I had forgotten what a creep Virgil was. Right? So in my reread, in my head, what I remembered was that Noemi didn't really look at Virgil as the culprit of anything until it was too late, because she was so wrapped up in her lust for him, even though he's her cousin's husband. The fact that that's how I remember that is wild, because that is not it at all, right? She is so icked out and grossed out by him. She is seeing red flags left, right, and center from the start. From the start, she is like, nope, this guy is not to be trusted. And yet, for some reason, every time he's around, I suddenly feel really horny. And she doesn't like it. Like, he keeps referring to her as either a good girl or as some kind of like wanton, lustful being. And she's neither of those things. She doesn't want him anywhere near her. She's not a good girl. She does have the capacity to manipulate people. And even she admits that. When he calls her a tease, she's like, yeah, like mentally. But she does not want him anywhere near her. And it's only when he manipulates her, it's only when he touches her and actually coerces her that she does anything, even remotely sexual. And the bathtub scenes creep me out. There are 2 scenes where, so there's cat fur everywhere. Every time I move my arm, I catch a bit. There are 2 bathtub scenes, and the first time she's like, oh my God, it's a dream. Why am I dreaming this? And the second time she's like, this is not a dream. Get me out of here. And I hated it. I hated it because for me, sexual assault of any kind is a trigger for me. It just is a trigger for me. When there is an authority figure in a younger person, it is worse for me. So whenever there's a storyline about teacher-student relationships or a younger than 18 sexual assault, that really triggers me. But sexual assault in general and sexual harassment triggers me. I knew going into this, there would be elements of that. And obviously it's not nearly as bad as some other books that I've read. God, imagine. So that was fine. But I do think it is something that is used really well in this story to kind of show, I mean, 1, how awful the men are, but 2, to show this theme of purity versus wantonness, which is a classic Gothic trope. And it's those things. They just layer upon layer upon layer Gothic tropes, and they're done so well and so tastefully. And the fact that like Francis doesn't come in guns blazing to get her out, but is very much her protector in those moments, it's so good. Yeah. She has a very clear sense of self in terms of knowing what she enjoys flirting, and also the men use that against her. Exactly. When she talks about that guy that she's got back in the city, and she knows full well that he's going to have someone else by then, she's like, it's not that deep. But I think also it's really interesting. The first conversation she has, she plays dumb. She doesn't let them see that she's manipulating them. And that is probably the only reason they actually allow her to stay. And then by the time the house is connected to her, Florence, who we will get to, can't do anything about it. Which, wild. Okay, let's talk Florence, shall we? Let's talk. I mean, she reminds me so much of the housekeeper, what's her face, from, what is that book? Rebecca. Mrs. Danvers. She reminds me of Mrs. Danvers so much. So in Rebecca, Mrs. Danvers doesn't like change. She doesn't like the fact that there is this new person who's never named come in, having married De Winter, Maximilian De Winter, which is a great name, and is in love with Rebecca. Yes, thank you. I knew you guys would know. Love Rebecca. So good. Should we, after we've done Silvia Moreno Garcia, should we do Daphne du Maurier? Just a suggestion. Let's keep the Gothicalong. I can speak English. Keep going. Anyway, yes. So her kind of control and almost violence towards the main character. I mean, Florence is actually violent. Like Florence actually like slaps her about, which is wild to me. The fact that she can get away with that is clearly a sign of the times, and clearly a sign like the fact that it's wild. And also wild that she had a son knowing that he was going to be sacrificed. He's just a body. He's somebody. Yes. I'd be up for that because I've only read Rebecca. Okay, I will bear that in mind. Okay. Because I've also only read Rebecca. I feel like I started Jamaica Inn when I was younger, but never quite finished it. But then I was younger. It was before my time as a Gothic nerd. Yes, the idea that they're going to escape their own oppression by becoming an oppressor. I think sometimes this is mistakenly labeled similarly as the abused become the abuser. And it is just a form of additional patriarchy. It's internalized patriarchy. Specifically in this, in fact, it's internalized misogyny. She treats Naomi like an idiot because she's a little girl and refers to her as a little girl quite a lot, when actually she is a woman in the exact same situation. Oh, hey, cat. My cat just ran into the room and slid across the floor. What you doing? Are you going to say hi to the people? They love seeing you. They do. They love seeing you. Say hey. It's mainly Ellen and Pixie. They're piping up the most, and we love to see it. But they love to see you. Oh, look how happy you are. He's like, I would like to be put down, but I am a happy boy. I'm a happy boy. Yeah. Oh, baby. Cute. He's got zoomies, though, so he's not sticking around. Yes, so they're obviously not verbatim the same, but she is allowing the oppression to continue because it gives her a modicum of power, especially in situations like the dining room and being able to eat. And the fact that she is literally poisoning the food that Naomi is eating. And she is literally dictating when Naomi can see Catalina, which to me would be a big red flag from the start. Where have you gone? Oh, you're right there. Hello, baby. I was like, I could hear him and he's right by my leg. Hello. It's not dinner time yet, baby. You don't eat for another 2 hours. It's not happening. He keeps coming up, rubbing against my leg and then wandering to the door as if to be like, are you coming with me? And the answer is no. No, I am not. You can purr at me all you like. I'm not feeding you yet. It's not dinner time yet. God, put some fur in my tea. That's what it needs. Oh, okay. Thank you. See, Pixie's happy to see you, as is Ellen. In fact, Ellen's giving you scritches. Sorry, Ellen. Doesn't care. Yeah, the silent dining room. Creepy. And what I find really creepy about this is the idea that it's silence because Howard is getting involved. Howard is in their head and manipulating stuff. And he doesn't like too much noise because he feels it throughout the house. Wild. I'm not even as vocal as I want to be today. I'm exhausted tonight. That's fair. I feel like I don't know what it is about March, but March wears people out. So you don't even have to be that vocal. I just love that you're here and I love that you're piping up. Even if it is just to correct me with Danvers, because I need it. And you know what? The fact that you're giving me any of that percentage, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Okay, so we've gone through, I want to call her Danvers then. Florence, Noemi, Catalina, briefly, Virgil as a creep. I don't think I've got much more to say about him. He had every opportunity to redeem himself to me and he didn't. But it's weird to me what I remembered versus how I remembered it. And the fact that he is so manipulative and cold, void of anything. The demise of... Yes. So let's talk Howard next. Necessary but disturbing. So can we talk about how he is literally falling apart? Have you seen Anastasia? This is relevant, I promise. So in Anastasia, which was originally by Fox, not Disney, although Fox is now owned by Disney, so she is technically a Disney princess, even though she wasn't at the time. Rasputin breaks down. He decays. He smells bad. He's grotty. He's literally falling apart. His head falls into his insides and he is just a rib cage. That is how I imagine Howard to look. I imagine, especially when he has that black gunk falling out of himself. My question is, when he first comes to the dinner table and he has clean white teeth but purple gums, how's he done that? Who's he sacrificed to get that bout of health? And why doesn't it last? Wild that he is part of the sentient house, which I kind of love that. Wild that if you do something like smoke in your room, he can feel it. And the fact that it literally takes burning the house down to kill him, because a scalpel to the eye and 2 shots to the head weren't enough. Wild. wild. He is such an insidious creature, and the idea that all these people view him as a god or are taught to look at him as a god. Grim. Horrifying. Correct. Horrifying. I really liked the imagery used around him, though. The fact that he is kind of like a relic that has been overgrown by the mushrooms he's cultivating. The fact that these pustules are all over him, like what is the phrase she uses? Like they're encrusted, like the hull of a ship, but I can't remember what the little fishy things are called. I have now read 3 books in 2 months with someone who got stabbed in the eye. What were the other 2? What were the other 2 books? Because if I haven't read them, they're going on a list. Yeah, wild. And what I also really, really like is the symbolism of Virgil also dying with something to the eye. Straight to the eye. Straight to the back of the head. Dead. But not really, but then dead. So one was another. Okay. And the other would be a spoiler. That's fair. Which one? Which Silvia Moreno Garcia was stabbing in the eye? Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Interesting. Is it certain dark things? Do I get to see eye stabbing in certain dark things? Because I'll pick it up quicker if that's the case. I'll prioritize it. Can't say I don't love an unhinged eye stabbing. Anyway. Okay, so we've kind of gone through key characters except for Francis. I don't think there's much more to say about Francis, to be honest. It is. Okay. Good to know. Unless you imagined it. I'll let you know. On the 9th of April. Yeah, I don't think there's much more to say about Francis. Francis is as Francis does. He does attempt to help Noemi. He is a wholesome little bean who feels trapped. And he gets out at the end, so we love to see it. We love to see it. He was a little wholesome boy. But that's it. I haven't got much else to say about him. The doctor was really cute. Not the old man doctor. The old man doctor that was also related to them and incest to them and sold his daughter to them. Get in the sea. But I also love that, right? So he's not there when all of this kicks off because he couldn't get there. He starts writhing around when the house starts to go down. Did he also die? Was that ever cleared up? Was every branch except for Francis cleared up? And also, Francis is the only baby not made of incest. So it's got to be a good thing, right? I really liked the old witchy lady. She was cool. Who gave Catalina and Noemi the little potion to get rid of the monster, the mucus mushrooms. That's what I'm looking for. Loved her. She thought she was cool. I also really enjoyed like when Noemi starts asking her questions. She's like, "Don't ask me questions. If I'm going to tell a story, I'm going to tell it with a drink. Just and listen." Love that. That's always a vibe. I really like the fact that because of where it's set in history, there is technology like cars and things like that, but there's no telephone, there's no easy access to anything. She has to do things the classical research way. I really like the metaphor and pathetic fallacy of the weather. I really like the deep, deep descriptions of everything. The house is so decadently described. I love that. And it is one of these things. I read this and I read Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. Oh, so good. If Mexican Gothic was set at a boarding school, that's Catherine House. It's great. As a modern Gothic with BIPOC rep, 10 out of 10. And LGBT. What's not to love? The only thing it's really missing is disability rep, and it has a few like neurodiverse characters, but they're never explicitly described as neurodiverse, so they're more neurodiverse coded than explicitly neurodiverse. But they're a good time. I think the book ends at the right point. Frances is hella dependent on Naomi, but she's not like totally head over heels in love with him. No, I feel like they end on an equal footing where they're like together, but it's not, and they're going to live happily ever after. They've been through something really traumatizing together, but I could totally believe that she goes off and just lives her life as a single woman. I could totally believe her doing that. And I could totally believe him just like following her around and being like, I get to go to school now. How exciting, you know? And I feel like her father would absolutely take him under his wing and be like, that's okay, we'll get you a job because you're family. Like, you're her brother-in-law, so we'll take care of you. And then they just never explain any of the other stuff that happens. I agree the timing was perfect. Very Edwardian Gothic. Victorian is out of reach, but everyone else is old-fashioned. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Because they don't have a family member who's 400 years old. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It does make me wonder, though, because in theory, the Americas weren't a thing in the same way. So invading and colonizing Mexico, it was like very risky because I don't know whether there would have been a settlement anywhere near there when he moved. But to get the people on side and then, I mean, what classic white colonialism. Classic. Anyway. But yes, it got 5 stars. It was majestic. It was fun. It was everything I needed it to be. It had the right pacing, the right amount of interesting characters, development, plot, intrigue, the way the mystery kind of breaks down, the fact that she's an active participant in the mystery, an active detective. We love to see it. It was a 10 out of 10. Would recommend. Would reread. There is not a hair on this book's head that I would change. Not a one. So I guess that just leaves us with whether you guys have any questions, whether you've got anything else you want to add. Because if not, we're going to have to talk about certain dark things. We're going to have to talk about how it's set in like the 80s. 80s or 90s? I can't remember. But it's neo-noir, so it'll be around then. With modern vampires. Aztec and Mayan vampires. Recommended highly by Stephen Graham Jones, so it should have been a good time. I'm nervous about this one, though. It has a booby off mushrooms. Nah, I don't. The mushrooms weren't the problem. The fact is, he put a woman's soul into the mushroom. That was where he went wrong. Should have left it alone. I think I'd read it too in a few years. To be fair, yeah, it's been 3 years since I read it, and I would still recommend it. It still holds up. And if I do a video where I talk about books that hold up, it'll be on there. It's also a book that I would happily recommend to people as like an intro to Gothic fiction. If people are like, I love a thriller, or I love a contemporary, or I love a historical fiction with like a spooky element, I'd be like, cool, try it. But I feel like at this point, everyone has. I feel like the reason I left this one to the middle is because it was such a reliable little bean. We knew we'd have a good time with it. So my experience in Sandbox, it was very different from it. Oh, interesting. Just raced through it. I've picked it up 4 times and I've never finished it. I'm there. And I have been for about 1.5 years. So 0 impact on my brain. Good. Yeah, okay, interesting. Even Gods of David Shadow, or did you not read that one in the end? Because you were worried it was going to be too YA. I can't wait for you to read Beautiful Ones if you haven't read that one yet. That's so good. That is so good. But yeah, I'm going to assume you don't have any other questions for me then. So I'm going to leave it here. Feel free to treat yourself to something from Waypoint Books because it supports me and my content. Obviously, I've got the Patreon now. Most of you have seen it or know of it, but I still need to update the actual video and share that. Yeah, Superior is still in the chat. So treat yourself to something like that if you want to know more about race science because it's interesting. And I will see you all very, very soon. I've really enjoyed talking about this one because it's one of my favourites. So thank you for putting a smile on my face and getting all chatty with me. I've had a great time and I will see you